Hello and welcome. My name is Mary Cummins, and today I am working on the conclusion to the book Fuel by H.G. Tudor. Tudor informs us that he and his kind rule the world, and it helps us realize that relationships on planet Terra are built on submission to the biggest bully, and that those without a conscience act out of malevolence. They have a will to do harm, and they enjoy it. The empath who doesn't set boundaries and doesn't want to face the darkness within empowers the illusory construct of the grandiose narcissist. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? This grim brother's fantasy is a trap to keep us in ego territory, rather than fight to gain our autonomy. To look within requires a rare type of courage. As we look at the Stanley Milgram shock therapy experiment, it gives us an idea of what we might find in the folds of our being, our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Added to that is the nation's penchant for cruelty, as in torture and waterboarding. It seems crazy and chaotic right now, but it is also a time of opportunity to march step by step to your freedom through the many useful tools available that enable us to deal with our unconscious programming. That is, if you have a will to try. In the conclusion to the book Fuel, H.G. Tudor admits his anger and fear when he says, quote, "Fuel is central to our existence, and tampering with it will result in a swift and vicious response." So the empath gives him their life energy, and then he says they're tampering with him when they want to control their energy. He reacts with insolence and outrage and loses contact with reality because of his sense of grandiosity and entitlement. H.G. Tudor is an example of a parasitic class that we have as politicians. They believe that the people's money is theirs to do with as they will. Forget infrastructure. They spend it on their projects and they're not held accountable. Tudor says that he is, quote, "suspicious, always evaluating and watching for the next move," end of quote. So here is an example of extreme negative intimacy. He doesn't trust you, is apprehensive, suspicious and wary of you. Government, with the use of cryptocurrency, now want to control your bank account. And if you think for yourself, act independently, you won't get to spend your own money. Then Tudor admits that he is programmed. Quote, "This is the way that we have been structured and programmed. We cannot stop." He has no desire to change. And all of us are programmed because otherwise we wouldn't be giving them our energy. They will take it by any means necessary and are willing to use extreme measures to get what they want. They vampirize those who want to come out of their program, and he is letting us know that we don't have a choice. But this is a lie. We certainly do have a choice. And he ends the conclusion of his book by saying, quote, "We will be thinking about our supply of fuel from you," meaning as you read his book. These ones think that we owe them what they have not earned, And the reason is that we as empaths are naive and give to them in an automated way through our own programming. They are not happy with your kindness or positive fuel, and then they have to go to misery. And like any addiction, it's just never enough. You might be thinking, why are we reading this book? Well, as we read, it becomes clear that when we are in our ego, we are fundamentally in a narcissistic frame of mind. We wear a mask promoting ourselves as good people and look for social approval. As we read this book, we become more aware of that, and also realize that if we were raised by an angry parent, we learn to give our power away to them. So when an extreme narcissist like Tudor comes along, we tend to do the same. As we read and understand the control mechanisms implemented by Tudor and his kind, we learn that we need to take our power back. We also get a clear understanding that there are takers in the world, and that we need to be wise about who we give our energy to. Jesus said in Matthew 7:6, "Do not, quote unquote, cast your pearls before swine." We can invest our time and energy in those who are givers. We have been trained to respect and obey authority. If someone asked you if you would cause extreme harm to another person, most people would answer, "No, I would never do that." People rarely see themselves as violent or being capable of committing violent acts. Yet we see it being done in society daily. Stanley Milgram was born in New York in the 1930s. He wondered, how could people commit atrocities against others, as was done in World War II, and especially the Holocaust? He was a psychologist at Yale University and worked on the Milgram shock therapy experiment, as it came to be known. For 2 years, starting in 1961. The prediction was that about 3% would administer the shock, but a shocking 65% administered it during the experiment. Just 33% got up and walked out. These were the ones who maintained their capacity for critical thinking and were able to override authority. The volts administered went from a mild 15 volts to an extremely dangerous and marked, potentially fatal 450 volts. In the experiment, people were not hurt, as those receiving the shock were actors and part of the experiment. They would cry out as if the shock was administered, so that the person administering the shock could hear them, and believe that it was real, and as the voltage went up, they screamed louder. Everyone in the experiment went up to 300-volt levels. Replications over the years have produced similar results. These results show that under certain circumstances, most people would actually cause harm for a quote-unquote good cause, or simply complying with authority. In an experiment like this, the psychologist doing the experiment is seen as the legitimate authority. Then the subject administering the shock, the participants, do not take responsibility for their own actions, and are likely motivated by the desire to do what they can for the benefit of science, and that it's worthwhile. They hear the screams of the person receiving the shock, and still assent to the command of authority, even though these orders are in conflict with their own moral beliefs. Standing up to a legitimate authority figure, like the psychologist leading the experiment, causes fear, anxiety, and confusion. So for those of you involved with an outright narcissist, remember that you are not alone, and as an empath, we're trained to give away your power to these ones. If under the influence of these ones you did things that you would not normally do, moving to compassion for yourself and the others is a great first step in changing your patterns. So now we turn to a more difficult subject matter, that is waterboarding. In speaking about torture, I have used some drawings from an innocent victim of waterboarding, Abu Zubaydah, who described one of the ways where he was held underwater in a coffin-shaped box, with his hands and feet bound and just his nose above the water. He was held in that box for approximately 11 days. It is a controlled form of drowning. Torture was illegal in the US military until the late 1990s, where the CIA was torturing people in other countries, but not Americans. Then they said, quote unquote, well, if we don't find out what people know, then potentially millions could die. So then they made it legal in the 2000s, including waterboarding. Waterboarding is difficult for the human personality and really damages the soul. John Kiriakou, a CIA agent who helped capture Abu Zubaydah originally, as he was supposedly the most dangerous man alive, opposed waterboarding. When he realized that this man was waterboarded, he exposed it. He was imprisoned for 2 years. He was asked in an interview if he would do it again, and he answered with a resounding, "Yes, I would." The CIA lied about the whole thing, destroyed all recordings to protect their reputation. And these drawings then are done by Abu Zubaydah, the innocent victim. Then you have this idea that police are allowed to lie now, when before they had to tell the truth. The RICO laws made it so that the police could say, quote unquote, your friend told us that you were both involved, and he is getting the deal, and you are not. So the police lying is the same thing. Then we have the Patriot Act enacted right after 9/11, which broadened surveillance and allowed citizens' communications to be monitored under the guise of uniting and strengthening America. The FBI go out and create all of these rebellion pockets for terrorists, both foreign and domestic. Turns out that all the people that joined these groups were FBI informants. There were no domestic terrorists. They were all FBI guys. This is the same level of deceit that the cops who used to have integrity and serve and protect citizens now lie and are closer to the criminals than to the average person. So torture was illegal, but was sacrificed for waterboarding. Cops lie, and the FBI entraps. Recognizing that these patterns of compliance are within us is difficult, and understanding oneself and being able to do something about it requires effort, learning, and actualization. The work, though grueling and tough, is rewarding. You build the muscle based on your perception of truth. Follow the works of Carl Jung to see the truth. Engage in the Vipassana with S. Goenka to get down to the roots of the unconscious motivation. Now is the time, and freedom is there for those who will have it. It's up to all of us to add our part, our realizations that are as important as any, because the dilemma we face is one and the same, and the solution is found in our union in the pursuit of freedom. We can then see through the coercion and control. Here is a quote from Khalil Gibran, where he says, quote, "Work is love made visible. And if you can't work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of the people who work with joy." And now we come to the conclusion. Narcissists who are without a conscience are highly represented in public life. They are willing to do what it takes to get to the top. Greg Braden talks about how science has been hijacked by corporations, politics, religion, and academia. There is a battle going on for our thoughts, our beliefs, and even our humanness. The battlefield for how we think is being outplayed in the media across every nation in the world. Mika Brzezinski of MSNBC, during President Donald J. Trump's first term, took offense with the popular slogan, "Make America Great Again." She stated, quote unquote, "That is our job," meaning herself and her colleagues, as the media, see their role as social engineers, change agents, controllers, for how society must think. Remember, Mika's father was none other than that great psychopath, Zbigniew Brzezinski himself, one of the greatest destroyers of our constitutional freedoms to ever hold office. If we remember that all public figures have high levels of narcissism, then we understand how and why this battle is ongoing. They are there to remove God and cosmic principles from society and set the state up as God. And they do need our consent to do it. Remember, in every vampire movie, the bloodsucker cannot enter your room uninvited. Once in, you can never get them out by anything other than a grueling detoxification from the addiction to their abuse and bloodletting. There is now a grueling world detoxification occurring. Present-day politics and an agenda-driven science would have us believe that humans are frail and powerless, and that we need mechanical upgrades like computer chips to replace our neurons, with chemicals in our blood and wires under our skin to perpetuate our species. What we fail to see is that the technology mimics what we already do in the cells, atoms, and molecules of our own bodies. Our minds are connected to our divine self, and that is what gives us the power we need to change, to be creative, and to course correct. Empaths can begin to question whether they want to choose to empower these predators who will only use the empath's energy to do harm to others, aided by the empath's addiction to the narcissist. Empaths can choose to draw boundaries and learn to connect with someone who is worthy of their love. To do this, they must break the bonds of their earliest childhood conditioning that has led to a lifelong set of engagements that are just a reenactment of the original Stockholm Syndrome, passed wittingly or unwittingly down to them by their parents. It is an opportunity for the empath to break the cycle of giving their love and trust to those who cannot be trusted. Thank you very much, and that is the end of the book Fuel, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.